Waraabon irraa bu'ee qeeransiin irra bahu bineensi bineensumaa tokkolleen waan naannahu nyaatamuun kiyya loolu dheessuus waa duraan bahu humna too jabeeffadhee xiyya koo qopheeffadhee lachuutuuf irraa dhawu.
Magarsaa beeyladaan deettee filfilee muka gammoojjii gaalaa fi hireen jiraatteeni annanii dhadhaatu jira gammoojjiin tanaan bareette annanii dhadhaatu jira gammoojjiin tanaan bareette.
Oromiyaa Oromiyaa abdiitaa biyya baadiyyaa siiduuneetti bareedamtee si baafna booyaa. Magarsaa beeyladaan deettee filfilee muka gammoojjii gaalaa fi hireen jiraatteeni annanii dhadhaatu jira gammoojjiin tanaan bareette annanii dhadhaatu jira gammoojjiin tanaan bareette. Oromiyaa Oromiyaa abdiitaa biyya baadiyyaa siiduuneetti bareedamtee si baafna booyaa. Oromiyaa Oromiyaa abdiitaa biyya baadiyyaa siiduuneetti bareedamtee si baafna booyaa.
There was one interesting thing you said about how, ordinary Ethiopians in the north are suffering, in many of the same ways that Oromo people are suffering or other peoples of the south are suffering. And it seems to me that, the elite have, on the one hand, convinced these ordinary northern Ethiopians that this great history and this great myth belongs to them.
Yeah.
And then the Oromos are the enemy.
Yes.
And I think that really plays into the resistance because they think this myth benefits them when in reality it does not.
It does not, yeah. It does not. The thing is, it's when you, it's like sugar coating, these are poison, but it's rubbed with religion, and handed out. So it's religious, and religion is a very difficult thing to challenge. Yeah.
So one thing that I have is, okay, economy. They're like the northern. They have the same issue with us, or they have the same lifestyle. But when it comes to culture and when it comes to history and literature and all that, they're benefited, right? So if you want to elaborate on that.
Yeah, the thing is, let's put it this way. The Amhara, who is in his home country, who is living his own life, cultivating his own land, suffering from similar diseases that we suffer from, neglected diseases. These are not our enemy. These are our potential friends. Maybe out of ignorance today, they don't understand. But those who come to, the question is, why? Why is the traffic only one way? How come that there is no Oromo owning a house in Gondar? How come that there is no Oromo owning a house in Makale? How come that the movement is always, one way? They might say, oh, the land there is not productive. But the thing is, how come that Gurages don't go to Makale and open shops? Okay, let's the land be not productive. If Gurages can go to Ogaden and open shops, how come that they don't go there? So it's a deliberate policy. You see, what they're saying is, What is mine is mine. What is yours is also mine. That's what they are saying to the Gala. And these Galas are now waking up. And it's a high time we wake up and tell them to stop, because it's bad for them too.
We have been telling them to stop for a long time.
Yeah.
And it seems like the more we tell them, we have told them in so many languages, in
Yeah.
their language, in our language, in foreign language, in sign language,
Mm.
they don't really seem to hear. So is telling really enough, or telling them to stop enough, or is it stopping them?
Well, you see, stopping them will come by itself. I'll never give up on telling them, because when stopping them comes by itself, it's going to be bad. I don't want to see it. I don't really want to see it. We've seen it in other places. You know, when you dehumanize people, like the Hutu, the Tutsi did to the Hutu. I remember when I was in high school, 100,000 Hutus were massacred. And the African Union, OAU said, it's an internal issue. They said that, internal issue. As we get massacred economically, as we get dispossessed of our land, today, all these big powers that you call African Union, it's African Onion or African Union, I don't know, or the West, they're watching. They're watching us. They see it. They see what is happening to us. And one day when things go out of hand, they're going to say, oh, we didn't know. But it's a lie. They knew that what happened to the Tutsi in Rwanda was about to happen. It was not an overnight thing. It was building up for a very long time, and they knew it. And they didn't know. So they shed crocodile tears after all that has happened.
I think the story, that there is some insight here from the discussion that emerges. Historically, the dominant class, the elite in Ethiopia, has been to perceive the Oromo as the threat to their own way of life.
Yes.
And that requires to not dehumanize, but to de-Oromize the Oromos,
Yeah.
but at the same time,
Yeah.
create an image of the Oromo that they are the brutal horde
Yeah.
that is going to destroy Ethiopia if it's not kept in check.
Absolutely.
In that enterprise, as you were repeatedly saying, outsiders have been supportive of the project.
Absolutely.
And that's true.
Yeah.
But there is also a strategy on the part of the Oromos. If the goal is to de-Oromize culturally,
Yeah.
economically,
Yeah.
politically, I mean, we know that, economically, dispossessing of their land, culturally, destroying Oromo self-knowledge, politically denying Oromo's self-rule,
organization.
self-rule, or even participating in any rule in Ethiopia. That has been the strategy. And what would be the Oromo response to that? It has to be self-discovery.
Exactly.
If the attack is directed at being Oromo, at Oromumma, the response should be to rebuild Oromumma. Go back to resources, our own resources, to say, no, we are not the animals that they say, on the one hand,
Yeah.
but also strengthen Oromo by just going and rebuilding what they're targeting. So that is what it is, because, as you were saying, Jawarin, 67% of the GDP, the 40% of the demographic weight is in favor of the Oromo. And any person that wants to remain dominant would go at the heart of the Oromo strength, and that is Oromoma, that they've been targeting for years.
Absolutely.
And that actually brings us right into the next question, which is, what do you see the role of young Oromo scholars, artists, and other cultural workers what do you think is the role in the Oromo struggle?
I think the young has to prepare itself for a struggle, even if it takes the next 500 years. It's about what is at stake is human dignity. I don't want this kind of Oromo to live at all. It's better we die than live the way they want us to live. And we have to teach to our young educated Oromos, we have to listen to them and tell them our experience and prepare them for the bitter struggle, because this might take long, and however long it takes, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step, and that's what we're doing now. And these steps we talked about, Sheikh Bakri Sampalo, that happened in the 1950s. We're talking, it's not a vacuum. The Oromo struggle is not a vacuum. The birth of an idea, a human being is conceived and is born in 9 months. An idea, according to Oromo, to be conceived and to be born, to be delivered, takes 40 years. Now the idea, all the sacrifices that Oromo fighters, our martyrs have done over the last 40, 50 years or 100 years, have given birth to the idea we now call Oromumma. This Oromumma, the Oromo personality, wants to be free, wants to be equal, wants to be independent. By independence, I'm not talking political. I don't want anybody to patronize me. I don't want to be patronized by anyone. I want to think, I want to decide my own fate as an individual and as group and as Oromo. So the idea is that if they don't allow this, because this is human, then the reaction is also going to be human. The Oromo question is not a civil rights question, it's a human rights question. And I think we have been abused for too long that we don't even think that we're being abused. It has just become abuse, has become a way of life for the Oromo that we tend to accept it. And it's sad, it's very sad.
Yeah, the youth need to be prepared for a long struggle.
Yeah.
What they need to know what preparedness means.
Yes.
And I would like you to speak to this issue of being prepared in the context of your knowledge of Oromo history. You've been talking about Sagli earlier. Can you speak to the idea of Mara, the moment that we are in the long Oromo history of 3,000 years,
Yeah.
when there is change and transformation? Can you speak to that?
Yeah.
And you also spoke about 40 years for an idea to develop.
Yeah.
So there is also another cycle there,
Yes.
another Mara.
Yes.
So there is a 40-year cycle here, all right? Could
Yeah.
you speak to the moment that we are in,
Yeah.
and then tell the youth this is what preparedness means? 2 or 3 things that they could take out of this conversation. So please speak to this idea of this long cycle of Gada renewal
Renewal, yeah.
in the 40-year cycle of ideas development, and in that context speak to the youth. Say 1, 2, 3. This is what you need to do to prepare.
Yeah, you are asking for the impossible, but I try, and if I fail, don't blame me. like we've been discussing the whole afternoon, what constitutes Oromuma is the knowledge. And this knowledge doesn't come like, it's not a revelation from heaven. It comes from a lived experience of the Oromo. The Oromo to live, to produce, producing took sweat. And in the process of producing to survive, the Oromo has learned the link between Jiru and Jireen. If there is no work, there is no life. For Oromo, work and life, in fact, the word Jiru and Jireen, they derive from the same root word. Therefore, for Oromo, experience is where knowledge comes from. And this knowledge has to be transmitted from generation to generation. The Abyssinian educational system supported by the West is meant to break this transmission of Oromo knowledge. Everybody thinks that education is good, and we all believe education is good. But if education is to make you forget what you already know, that's not called education, that's called sorcery. You're being sorcered. Education is supposed to help you to embrace and develop the good knowledges that has been handed down from generation to generation, because that's also what history is. I don't think the Oromos were simply ignorant, because if they were totally blank and ignorant, they wouldn't have survived for the last God knows how many thousand years. And what sustained them was not Abyssinian education or modern education. It was their indigenous knowledge that sustained them. And to just discard this treasure that goes back thousands of years is really a huge foolishness on the part of the Oromo in the first place, and on the part of those who want to bury this for good, and on the part of the West itself, because this is not only Oromo, it is a body of the human knowledge that is being chopped off and being buried. The Oromo has got a complicated kind of, a complex kind of knowledge, and a very sophisticated concept of time and space, history, and so on. I could start talking, and 1 week won't be sufficient to really. The Oromo has got, their own view of the Creator and why He created the world and why He sustains the world. The Oromo have their own chirres, they call them chirres, medicine men and women who know how to treat animals, how to treat human beings. These are knowledges on which Oromo should build its future. These are the things that our young, educated people should be aware of. The struggle is about retrieving the self, and the self is constituted of this knowledge. And this knowledge I can't go into the details of the creation myth and the process and the Gada chronology, which goes back at least nearly 3,000 years or 2,800 years systematically. So our ancestors have toiled and left us a treasure which some irresponsible thugs are trying to get rid of. And that's what we should resist. And that's the responsibility of the young Oromos that are emerging, to do every search into the past, into the present. Because we have no future if these things are not done. So, well, I can't really answer the question to your satisfaction.
No, that was more than satisfying, I think.
Okay.
You have a question?
I just wanted to comment on what was already said, and I think knowledge of the past and vision for the future is critical in how we see ourselves.
Yeah.
But as to moving to the future, I think the key question is that we have to understand a couple of things. One is that these people, when they talk about freedom, when they talk about the rule of law and representative governance, they don't really love these things. I would say that they hate an Oromo than they love freedom. They hate an Oromo than they love rule of law. Because whenever I talk with an Amhara friend or a Tigray friend, which I have many, they don't seem to get those issues applying to the Oromo. Let us hypothetically think that if a house is burned upon, my house is burned, and I'm crying that my house is burned, who are they to tell me that your house is not burned if they are my friend? They will come and help me put off those fire. When Oromos are killed and Oromos people are crying for help, they will tell all the white people they know, all foreigners they know, no, that is not, there is no problem there. They want to really hide us. That is why when an Oromo person comes out and say, I'm an Oromo, he will immediately intimidated and attacked. And so we have to really understand this history that was built over 500 years. And yet these people hate you and intimidate you and insult you. They're beggars to insult an Oromo professor.
We have to be wary, have to be aware not to fall into the same trap that they have fallen into. Look, we are, you know, there is something very, very important in what Christians teach. This is what Jesus said, love your enemy. Actually, it's not about loving your enemy. Actually, if you love your enemy, you cannot, if why you're struggling as an Oromo is to exactly bring the same power that will repress others and kind of, if it is a power struggle, then I don't really want to contribute to that. I want the Oromo to understand that Oromo is no less or no better than anybody. We're just human beings. That's what we want the world to understand. That's what we want our young, educated Oromos to understand. This idea of Ethiopia is really a very complex thing. that we don't need to. If you have the time, I've been studying the concept Ethiopia. Actually, Ethiopia is an ideology. It is Ethiopianism, just like Orientalism. You know, there are Ethiopians in America. African Americans have been talking about Ethiopia long before Ethiopia was created there. Do you know there were Ethiopians in South Africa and Ethiopian church in South Africa? That in Caribbean there is this Ethiopianism, or that generated all this reggae music and Rastanism and all this. It's a dragon. Ethiopia is an ideology, it's a dragon, it's a discourse, it's a global discourse. It comes through fictions. You know, there are people who write, Graham Hancock, The Sign and the Seal, is a fiction and some real names jumbled up.
Yeah, we might be falling into that trap that you just said when we speak about that. There was something that you asked about the youth, and the message that he transmitted is that explore, learn, and know thyself. Know yourself.
That's it.
Know who you are. And I said thyself, speaking in a sort of religious language. And my friend was talking about religion. There's this knowledge that Gammachuun talked about, and that's what I wanted him to highlight. And when he speaks about cycle, it's really important. Cycle is very, very important in Oromo history and understanding of the universe itself. And in that cycle, he taught me that there is a cycle that goes in 3,140 years.
Yeah.
And he told me in 1992 we came to that long cycle of 3,140 years in 1992.
Yeah.
So the moment that we are in right now, according to Oromo reckoning of time, we are in that moment of sagli, a moment of crisis.
Yes.
And there is also another 40 years since Bakri Sapalo.
Yeah.
Another 40 years. So that's where we are right now.
Yeah.
In terms of the idea, there is a time to generate new ideas, and it's time for that idea to thrive right now. We're also in that moment of crisis that goes over 3,440 years.
Yeah.
That's the moment you are in. So it all converge on this idea. That's the moment that we are in the long cycle, and the ideas for develop in 40 years, that's where we are. Redeem the time. That's what Oromo elders would tell. Redeem the time, O youth, and learn about thyself. But that's the time that you're in. Maybe that's another time that you will talk about it.
Yeah.
I think
yeah.
about, sorry to interrupt, you yourself were saying why you studied Oromo, why you studied anthropology, and it said it's because you hold that book that was given to you by your grandfathers.
Yeah.
So what's your role? Not just you as an individual, but the elder, the wise, and the experience. What's your role in transforming that book to this generation, not just us seeking it?
Yeah. Oh yeah, you know, this question keeps coming to me, and God knows, you know, I wish there were people who will understand my problem and help me too. Me and my wife, we're both anthropologists. We have collected this unbelievable amount of data over the years, and I have worked on this PhD thesis. Then this PhD thesis has to be developed and turned into a book so that it becomes a fundamental, sort of a foundation document for all the things that I'm trying to do. And this new idea that this kid is referring to is actually emerging now. And it took almost 25 years, you know, of collecting and we're digitalizing something like 500 hours of oral recordings with Firebird Foundation, Firebird funding it. We're digitalizing it. So what am I doing? I am doing whatever I can, you know, but I get very angry. To tell you the honest truth, every time somebody asks me that, I feel a little bit itchy because why should you think that I should carry all the burden?
He wasn't, I don't think he was saying just you, the Gammachuu, but the rest of the Gammachuu generation.
Exactly.
What is their responsibility
in
passing the boku to the new Gammachuus
That's
of
what
our
I'm saying.
generation?
Yeah, that is the point, is it not? That's the point where I always worry, even in my dreams. I feel like, are we going to succeed in handing over all the experience and all these things to the next generation? Sometimes I get so frustrated. But what am I doing as Gammachuu? I teach. Wherever I get the opportunity, I tell every Oromo not to just be filled up with rage and anger, but with a cool head, let it take 1,000 years, do something that you should do today. If I do what I should do today, and everybody does what he should, don't postpone what needs to be done today for tomorrow. And then, if we can be free, if we can become human beings in 500 years, if we can come out of this darkness of imposed darkness by people who don't understand that they themselves are keeping themselves in their own people in the dark, in their effort to keep the Oromo in the dark, I think I would say that we have achieved something big. So what I do is teach.
Yes.
How do I teach? I teach like this, you know. Call me anywhere, you know. I don't know how to organize, you know. I'm not an organizer, but wherever there is an opportunity, I would go. I'll take the risk. By the way, I'm going home. The last time I came to Minnesota, I was speaking like this, and a certain fellow raised his hand and said, after you have said all these things, are you going home? I know what he meant. He was basically telling me that I was an Asian provocateur, that I was sent by the security here, and I speak my mind to provoke others. And I didn't know this guy, but I told him, I bet you are not an Oromo. And the whole place clapped because they knew he was not an Oromo. So we have problems. We live in a thorny surrounding. You go this direction, it's thorny. You go that direction, it's cobras and path adders everywhere, you know.
Yes.
But we have no choice. The name of the game is a struggle. Struggle as an individual, struggle as whatever group you are in, struggle as Oromos. And the direction, we should not base our struggle on hatred for the other. No, try to overcome that. We struggle because we love Oromo. We love ourselves. We're not struggling because we hate somebody else. This has to stop. Oromo nationalism should be built on loving oneself. If you love yourself, you cannot hate the other. So we'll look for everything that is good about Oromo and teach to the generation we have after us, and then it is the responsibility. You have more responsibility than we are because my budget is.
What do you think are some of the major obstacles to solidarity and unity among the Oromo?
Oromo is a people who've been deliberately divided, given, a colonizing structure has been created. Like during my grandfather's time, there was no Dhuma ጠቅላይ ግዛት, Arusi ጠቅላይ ግዛት, Hararge ጠቅላይ ግዛት. For heaven's sake, where does the word Hararge come from? Why should it be called Hararge when the land is the land of the Itu and the Humbala? It's a Gada territory. So Oromos of today, since we do not know our past, we are mistaking the colonizing structure for Oromo, which it is not. Nothing called Wallaga existed during my grandfather's day. Well, it was Macha. That's what my grandfather knew. Macha and Tulama. That was a Gada territory. Now you have Wallaga. And Wallaga was a very tiny place around Lakant where it's called the Ardajila. People used to, it is where people sit facing different directions when on the Ardajila. There is this group that they call, relate to each other as Sunsum, and they're not supposed to face each other when they settle. Malif Wallagatu, Wallaga. And that tiny spot has been taken and given to the whole of that territory. So these people, these colonizers, have really distorted and almost buried the Oromo, the structure of the Oromo knowledge, which we need to rediscover and transmit to our young ones and reinstitute them. Now your question is, could you remind
what's the
me?
Oromo concept of unity?
The Oromo, when Oromos say, particularly in the diaspora, I hear people blaming one another. Everybody is looking for a scapegoat. This time it is the RC that is a scapegoat. Another time it is these people from the east. Another time it is this Pentecostal Wallaga. Another time it is this Shawa. This is normal. We've been separated for almost 200 years. Since the Gada was destroyed, the center of the Abamuda was destroyed, Oromo was dismantled and scattered. And because of world history and accident, Oromos now come to meet one another. Where do they meet? Outside Oromia, in a foreign land. And they see each other. Everybody those who come from Wallaga had a completely different idea of those who come from Arsi or those who come from Harar. Those who come from Harar have their view about Wallaga is not realistic. So they encounter each other and then things fall apart and then you have to look for someone to blame. This is normal. It doesn't discourage me at all. And Oromo is a wonderful people. Just doesn't buy to a dictator's idea and follow one line. That's actually what created a disaster with the so-called Ethiopia, because they have this Nugus system. One person always, decides on the life of everybody. It is good to have a leader, but a leader emerges from consensus. Oromo, in order to find out what this consensus is, the young Oromos will have to go back and find it in their own tradition, the Gada and the Kalu, the Wayu, the Hayu, the Taraba, the Ukisu, the Dawa and the Ibayu, the Busa and the Gonofa. It's there. It's there out there. Go and look for it and reassemble it. Don't expect it like Gammachuu is going to give the solution. Nobody has a solution. Every generation has to find a solution by using the same resource.
Yes.
We have tried to use, Alibra has tried to use the resources of Oromo oral tradition in order to make all these songs that has awakened the Oromo nation. If you are doing something else in another area, you have to go and find out and see how you can utilize those resources.
Waraabon irraa bu'ee qeeransiin irra bahu bineensi bineensuma tokkolleen waan aannahu nyaadamuun kiyyan oolu dheessuus waa duraan bahu humna too jabeeffadhee xiyya koo qopheeffadhee lachuutuuf irraa da'u.